The Korean Mafia boss jokingly asked a black waitress for financial advice, but her intellectual reply shocked him and all the advisors. The spreadsheets made no sense. Hwan-Sik stared at the numbers his financial advisor had laid out across the table at Meridian Cafe, and all he could see was a problem with no solution. 28 years old, head of the Huang family operations for 4 years, and he'd navigated gang wars, federal investigations, and hostile takeovers. But this was different. "The money is disappearing," Lee Sang-woo said quietly, pushing another report across the table. As Hwan-Sik's chief financial officer, Sang-woo had been with the family for 15 years, outlasted Hwan-Sik's father, survived 3 regime changes, and never once looked this worried. Not stolen, not skimmed, just gone, like it's evaporating. "Money doesn't evaporate," Hwan-Sik said, voice tight with frustration. Around him, his inner circle shifted uncomfortably. Sang-woo, Park Jun-ho, his head of security, and Kim Dae-jung, his operations manager. 3 men who'd seen him handle impossible situations, now watching him struggle with something that should have been simple. "It does when your laundering structure is full of holes," Dae-jung said bluntly. "Boss, we've been using the same shell companies, the same routing, the same methods your father established 20 years ago. The world has changed. Financial tracking has evolved. We're hemorrhaging money because our infrastructure is outdated." Hwan-Sik rubbed his temples where a headache throbbed. He'd inherited an empire built on his father's ruthlessness and his grandfather's connections. But he'd also inherited outdated systems, old-school methods, and advisors who thought the answer to every problem was more violence or more money. "So what's the solution?" he asked. "We hire new financial consultants? Risk bringing in outsiders who could expose us? Or we modernize existing structures," Sang-woo said. "But boss, that's expensive. We're talking about dismantling and rebuilding our entire financial network. Millions in upfront costs before we see any return." "Millions we're already losing," Jun-ho pointed out. "At this rate, we'll bleed out in 18 months. The table fell silent. 18 months. A year and a half until the Huang family organization, built over 3 generations, survived through gang wars and federal crackdowns, collapsed under its own outdated weight. Hwan-Sik looked around the cafe, needing a moment away from the crushing pressure of failure. Meridian Cafe was one of their legitimate businesses, a small place in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood that served good coffee and minded its own business. Useful for meetings that needed to seem casual, ordinary. His eyes landed on the waitress refilling coffee at the next table. He'd seen her before, worked here for a few months, maybe longer. Black woman, mid-20s, with natural hair pulled back in a professional bun and eyes that suggested intelligence beyond her service job. Right now, those eyes were definitely paying attention to their conversation. Not obviously. She wasn't staring or leaning closer. But Hwan-Sik had spent his life reading people, and this woman was listening, really listening. Her body language, the way she poured coffee on autopilot while her attention was clearly elsewhere. She'd heard every word. An idea struck him. Probably stupid, definitely impulsive, but the absurdity of their situation called for something unexpected. "Excuse me," he called out, voice carrying across the quiet cafe. "Miss?" The waitress turned, and Hwan-Sik saw the moment she realized she'd been caught eavesdropping. Her eyes widened slightly, hand tightening on the coffee pot. But she didn't look away, didn't make excuses. "Yes, sir?" Her voice was steady despite the nervousness in her posture. "You've been listening to our conversation," Hwan-Sik said, not accusatory, just stating fact. "Probably caught enough to have an opinion. So here's a question. What would you do? If you had an outdated financial infrastructure hemorrhaging money, how would you fix it?" Silence crashed over the table. Sang-woo and Dae-jung exchanged glances that screamed, "What the hell is the boss doing?" Jun-ho's hand moved subtly toward his jacket, where Hwan-Sik knew he kept a gun. The waitress looked between them, clearly weighing whether this was a test, a trap, or genuine curiosity. Then something shifted in her expression, the nervousness falling away, replaced by focused intelligence. "How much time do I have?" she asked. The unexpected question made Hwan-Sik smile despite the tension. "How much time do you need?" 30 seconds to think, 2 minutes to explain. She set down the coffee pot with decisive certainty. "Is that acceptable?" Boss? Sang-woo started to protest. Hwan-sik held up a hand, silencing him. This was the most interesting thing that had happened all week. 30 seconds. Starting now. The waitress closed her eyes and Hwan-sik watched her lips move silently, counting, calculating, organizing thoughts. Around them, the cafe continued its ordinary rhythm. An espresso machine hissed. Someone's phone rang, the mundane soundtrack to a moment that felt anything but. 28 seconds. The waitress opened her eyes. "You don't rebuild," she said, voice clear and confident. "You can't afford the time or the upfront costs. Instead, you implement a hybrid model. Keep your existing infrastructure for established operations, the ones that work. But create parallel systems for new business using modern methods. Cryptocurrency wallets, decentralized finance protocols, peer-to-peer networks. Let the old system wind down naturally while the new one scales up. You're not replacing, you're evolving. Lower initial investment, reduced risk, and you buy yourself time to transition properly." The silence that followed was deafening. Hwan-sik stared at this waitress who just solved in 90 seconds what his expensive advisors had been struggling with for months. Around him, his men looked equally stunned. "Cryptocurrency," Dae-jung said slowly. "That's actually brilliant. We've been so focused on traditional banking structures, we completely missed the entire digital finance evolution. It's not without risks," the waitress continued, warming to her subject now that she'd committed. "Crypto is volatile, and regulatory frameworks are still developing. But for moving money that needs to stay, let's say, flexible, it's significantly harder to track than traditional banking. And the decentralized nature means no single point of failure." Sang-woo leaned forward, suddenly all business. "You'd need expertise, people who understand blockchain technology, who can set up secure wallets, manage transactions." "You'd need to learn," the waitress interrupted, "or hire consultants. But the infrastructure itself is easier to establish than rebuilding traditional networks. And the cost is a fraction of what you'd spend on conventional restructuring." She paused, seemed to realize she'd been lecturing a table full of dangerous-looking men about their business, and some of the confidence wavered. "But obviously, you'd know better than me. I heard your problem, and that's what came to mind." Hwan-sik studied her, really studied her. This wasn't lucky guessing. This was someone with actual knowledge, real expertise, who for some reason was working as a waitress in a cafe. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rena. Rena Davis." "Well, Rena Davis, where did a waitress learn about decentralized finance and cryptocurrency protocols?" Something flickered in her eyes. Old pain, quickly hidden. "I have a degree in economics from University of Washington, specialized in financial systems and monetary policy. Was working toward my MBA when—" She stopped, choosing words carefully. "When the circumstances change. In other words, money problems." The irony wasn't lost on Hwan-sik, a woman with expertise in finance, forced to abandon her education and serve coffee because of financial difficulties, had just solved a multi-million-dollar problem for a criminal organization in under 2 minutes. "Boss," Jun-ho said quietly, "we should discuss this privately." "We should," Hwan-sik agreed, but he didn't break eye contact with Rena. "Thank you for your insight. It was, enlightening." Rena nodded, grabbed her coffee pot, and retreated to the counter with the careful neutrality of someone who just realized she'd gotten involved in something she shouldn't have. The moment she was out of earshot, Sang-woo leaned in. "Boss, she basically just explained money laundering improvements to us in a public cafe. Either she's incredibly naive or she knows exactly who we are." "She knows," Hwan-sik said, watching Rena wipe down the counter with unnecessary focus. "She understood the problem we were discussing immediately. You don't make those connections that fast unless you know what kind of money we're talking about." "So she's what? Fishing for a job? Trying to get recruited?" Dae-jung's voice was suspicious. "She's a waitress with an economics degree trying to make rent," Hwan-sik said. "Who overheard a problem and couldn't resist solving it? No angle. Just competence she doesn't get to use anymore." He understood that feeling. Being good at something you couldn't do. Having skills that went to waste because circumstances demanded you take a different path. "We should look into her solution," Sang-woo said, already making notes. "Boss, I hate to admit it, But the hybrid model could actually work, and crypto is something we haven't seriously considered. Look into it, Hwansik agreed. But his attention was still on Rena, who was now taking orders from a couple at table 6 with professional cheer that didn't quite reach her eyes. They discussed details for another hour. Sang-woo already excited about research directions. Dae-jung skeptical but intrigued. Jun-ho concerned about security implications of new systems. But Hwansik kept getting distracted, watching Rena work. She moved with efficient grace, managing 6 tables without ever seeming rushed. Remembered orders without writing them down. Diffused a cranky customer with humor and a free pastry. And every so often, her eyes would flicker toward their table with barely concealed curiosity. When they finally stood to leave, Hwansik made a decision that was definitely more impulse than wisdom. He left a $100 bill as a tip, far too much for coffee and the small pastries they'd ordered, with his business card underneath. On the back of the card, he'd written, "Thank you for the advice. I'd like to hear more." H.S. Rena found it after they left. Hwansik watched from the car as she picked up the bill, saw the card, went very still. She turned it over, read his message, and looked toward the window where his car was still parked. Their eyes met across the distance. Hwansik smiled slightly, raised his hand in acknowledgement. Rena stared at him for a long moment, then very deliberately tucked the card into her apron pocket. Not a refusal, not an acceptance, just consideration. "Boss," Junho said from the driver's seat, "that was subtle as a brick." "Sometimes bricks work," Hwansik said, still watching as Rena returned to work. "Let's go. We have a financial infrastructure to revolutionize." Rena Davis stared at the business card all through her shift, through closing procedures, through the bus ride home to her tiny studio apartment in the University District. The card was simple, embossed name, phone number, nothing indicating it belonged to someone who ran a criminal organization. But she knew. She'd known the moment she'd heard their conversation, caught the euphemisms and careful language that marked illegal operations. Money laundering. That's what they'd been discussing, restructuring their money laundering network, and she'd just offered them advice. "What were you thinking?" she muttered to herself, setting the card on her kitchen counter next to her laptop. "You could have gotten killed, or arrested, or both." But she hadn't been thinking. She'd been listening to a fascinating problem, and her brain had immediately started working on solutions. It was what she did, what she'd always done. See a problem, solve it. Even when the problem belonged to criminals, especially then, because the problem had been interesting. Rena opened her laptop, told herself she was absolutely not going to research Hwang Hwansik, and immediately typed his name into Google. The results were extensive and concerning. Hwang Hwansik, 28, current head of the Hwang family organization, Korean organized crime with operations spanning Seattle, Vancouver, several cities in California. Legitimate businesses including restaurants, import-export companies, and real estate. Suspected involvement in gambling, protection rackets, and, predictably, money laundering. But no convictions, no arrests, just suspicions and federal investigations that went nowhere. By all accounts, Hwansik was smart, careful, and significantly more sophisticated than his father had been. There were photos. Hwansik at charity events in expensive suits, looking polished and dangerous. Hwansik at restaurant openings, shaking hands with city officials. Hwansik at his father's funeral 4 years ago, young and stone-faced, suddenly responsible for an empire. In every photo, his eyes held the same focused intelligence she'd seen in the cafe, the look of someone always thinking 3 moves ahead. "This is insane," Rena said to her empty apartment. "You're not actually considering this. He's a criminal, a mob boss. This is every bad decision wrapped up in one attractive Korean package." Attractive. She'd noticed that, hadn't she? Even while explaining cryptocurrency protocols, some part of her brain had registered that Hwang Hwansik was devastatingly handsome. Sharp features, confident posture, eyes that made you feel like the only person in the room. Rena closed the laptop with more force than necessary. She had student loans from an education she couldn't afford to finish, a job that paid barely enough to survive, a degree in economics she got to use exactly never. The last thing she needed was to get involved with organized crime Because a mobster had pretty eyes and an interesting business problem. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it, heart hammering, somehow knowing before she answered. Hello? Rena Davis? That voice. Deep, controlled, unmistakable even through the phone. This is Juan Seek, from the cafe. I know who you are. I Googled you. His laugh was surprised and genuine. Direct. I appreciate that. Most people pretend they don't know what I do. Most people probably have better survival instincts than me. Rena paced her small apartment. Mr. Juan Seek, please. Juan Seek. I appreciate the tip, but I'm not interested in getting involved in whatever you're involved in. I gave advice because I heard a problem and couldn't help solving it. That's all. I understand. And I'm not calling to recruit you into anything illegal. A pause. Actually, that's not entirely true. I am calling to recruit you, but not for illegal work. Rena stopped pacing. What? My organization has legitimate businesses, real companies that need real financial expertise. And after seeing how fast you analyzed our problem, I'd like to offer you a job. Legitimate consulting work. Nothing illegal, nothing you'd need to compromise your ethics for. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. Consulting for a criminal organization. Consulting for businesses owned by someone who also happens to run a criminal organization. Once it corrected. The line between them is very clear. And you'd be working exclusively on the legal side. And if I say no, then I thank you again for today's insight, wish you well, and never bother you again. His voice was sincere. Rena, I'm not going to threaten or pressure you. I'm just offering an opportunity. Use your degree, make actual money, work on problems that matter. Why me? You could hire professional consultants, people with MBAs and fancy credentials. I could. But you solved in 90 seconds what they've been failing at for months. That's not something you learn from credentials. That's natural talent. He paused. And honestly, you interest me. Someone with your intelligence working as a waitress? There's a story there. I'd like to know it. Heat flooded Rena's cheeks. That's not professional. No, it's not. And I apologize if that's inappropriate, but I've never been good at pretending I don't feel things. Juansek's voice softened. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. We can discuss the job offer, or we can just talk, or you can tell me to get lost. But give me a chance to make a proper first impression that doesn't involve me mocking you in front of my advisors. You weren't mocking me, you were testing me. I was, and you passed so spectacularly that now I'm asking you to dinner. Is that a yes? Every logical bone in Rena's body screamed no. But that same problem-solving brain that had gotten her into this mess pointed out that she'd been serving coffee for 3 years, waiting for something to change, and nothing ever would unless she took risks. One dinner, she heard herself say, somewhere public. And Juansik, if this is some elaborate scheme to, it's not, I promise. Just dinner with someone who impressed me and interests me. That's all. Okay, tomorrow night. But I'm driving myself, and I'm telling my roommate exactly where I'll be. Smart. Send me your address anyway. I'll text you the restaurant information. Another pause. Thank you, Rena, for taking the chance. He hung up and Rena stood in her kitchen, phone in hand, wondering if she'd just made the best decision or the worst mistake of her life. Her roommate Trinity walked in from her evening class at community college, took one look at Rena's face and said, Okay, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I think I just agreed to have dinner with a mob boss. Trinity set down her backpack very carefully. I'm sorry, what? Remember those guys at the cafe today? The ones having the intense business meeting? The hot Korean guys in expensive suits? Yeah, hard to miss. Their boss asked me for financial advice as a joke, except I actually gave him advice, good advice, and now he's offered me a job and asked me to dinner, and I said yes to both. Rena collapsed onto their second-hand couch. I think I'm having a breakdown. Back up. Start from the beginning. What kind of advice? What kind of job? Rena explained the whole story, the overheard conversation, the improvised solution, the business card, the research, the phone call. Trinity listened with growing concern mixed with reluctant fascination. So let me get this straight, Trinity said when she finished. Hwang Sik, who you've now Googled and discovered is literally the head of Korean organized crime in Seattle, was impressed by your brain and wants to hire you. For legitimate work, he was very clear about that. Rena, honey, there's no such thing as legitimate work for a mob boss. It's all connected. I know it's stupid. I should cancel, block his number, pretend this never happened. Rena grabbed a throw pillow, hugged it to her chest. But Trinity, when's the last time anyone valued my skills? When have I gotten to use my degree for anything except calculating how short I am on rent? Trinity's expression softened. I get it. I do. But girl, this is dangerous. These aren't people you want to owe favors to. One dinner, just to hear him out. If it's sketchy or uncomfortable or he's not being honest about the work being legitimate, I walk away. And if he is being honest, if the offer is real? Rena didn't have an answer for that, because the truth was she was tired. Tired of struggling, tired of serving coffee with a smile while her education gathered dust. Tired of feeling like life was passing her by while she treaded water. If Hwan Sik was offering a chance to use her skills again, to do work that challenged her, to maybe finally get ahead instead of just surviving, then I'll figure it out, she said, one step at a time, starting with dinner. Trinity studied her for a long moment. Okay, but I want the restaurant name, his phone number, and I'm calling you every hour. Deal? Deal. And Rena, be careful, with the job and with him, because the way you talk about this guy, that's not just professional interest. I barely know him. You know enough to be intrigued, and that's when bad decisions happen. Trinity grabbed her laptop. Come on, if you're doing this, we're at least making sure you look amazing. What are you wearing? They spent the next hour going through Rena's limited wardrobe, Trinity vetoing options as too casual or too professional, or giving off way too much desperate energy. Eventually, they settled on a simple burgundy dress, sophisticated without trying too hard. You're not going to talk yourself out of this, are you? Trinity said, watching Rena try on the dress for the third time. Probably not. Then at least go in with your eyes open. This man is dangerous, Rena. Not movie dangerous, real dangerous. The kind who makes problems disappear. I know, but you're still going. Rena looked at herself in the mirror. 26 years old, degree in economics gathering dust, about to have dinner with the head of an organized crime family. And for the first time in years, she felt alive. The restaurant Hwan Sik chose was in Belltown. Upscale but not ostentatious. The kind of place where business people had expensive dinners and didn't ask too many questions. Rena arrived exactly on time, determined not to seem too eager or too nervous, both of which she definitely was. Hwan Sik was already there, standing when she approached the table. He'd traded the business suit for dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, somehow more devastating in casual clothes. When he smiled, genuine warmth reaching his eyes, Rena's heart did something complicated. Rena, he said, pulling out her chair. Thank you for coming. You look beautiful. You look surprised that I actually showed up. Honestly? A little. Most people research me and decide the smart move is to run far and fast. He settled into his own chair, and Rena noticed the careful way he'd positioned himself, back to the wall, clear view of entrances, never fully relaxed. The fact that you're here says something about your courage, or your recklessness. Probably both. Rena accepted the menu from a waiter who appeared silently. Let's establish ground rules. Tonight you tell me the truth. About the job, about what you really want, about what I'd actually be getting into. No euphemisms, no corporate doublespeak. Honesty. Hwan Sik's smile widened. Direct. I told you I appreciated that. Okay, honesty. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with who you are beyond the Google results. He leaned back, considering. I'm 28. Took over my father's organization 4 years ago when he died. Heart attack. Nothing dramatic. I have a younger sister in college at UW studying art history. I speak 3 languages, have a degree in business from USC that I barely use, and I'm trying to transition my family's operations toward legitimacy. Transition how? Slowly, carefully. You don't walk away from 3 generations of organized crime overnight. But I'm building legitimate businesses, phasing out the more dangerous operations, trying to create something that doesn't require violence to maintain. Hwan-sik's expression was serious. My father ruled through fear. I'm trying to rule through economics. Make us more profitable legal than illegal. That's ambitious. That's survival. The world is changing. Organizations like mine either evolve or die. I'd prefer to evolve. The waiter returned for their orders. Hwan-sik ordered for both of them after politely asking Rina's preferences, in Korean, the language smooth and confident. When the waiter left, Rina found herself staring. What? Hwan-sik asked, slight smile playing on his lips. Just trying to reconcile the man who orders dinner in Korean with the man who runs a criminal empire. I'm both. That's what makes this complicated. He poured water for both of them, the gesture oddly intimate. Your turn. Tell me why an economics degree from UW is serving coffee instead of working on Wall Street. Rina had known this question was coming, but it still hurt. My mom got sick my senior year. Cancer. I took a year off to help care for her, burned through my savings paying for treatments insurance wouldn't cover. She died anyway. By the time I tried to go back for my MBA, I couldn't afford it. Couldn't get more loans. Had to work to survive. She met his eyes. So I serve coffee and try not to think about what could have been. I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you. Rina took a breath, pushing past the grief that still sat heavy in her chest. That's why I noticed your problem at the cafe. I may be serving coffee now, but I still think like an economist. Can't shut it off. Good, because I need someone who thinks like an economist. Hwan-sik pulled out his phone, showed her a document. This is what I'm offering. Consulting position with Huang Enterprises, my legitimate holding company. You'd evaluate our current businesses, recommend improvements, help identify new opportunities. Salary is $90,000 to start, full benefits, and a performance bonus structure. $90,000. Rina's current salary at the cafe was $28,000. Her hands shook slightly as she looked at the offer letter. That's more than generous. It's market rate for someone with your expertise. And honestly, if you save us even a fraction of what we're currently hemorrhaging, you'll have earned 10 times that. Hwan-sik watched her face carefully. The work is legitimate. You'd have access to all our legal business's books, full transparency. If you find anything illegal in those operations, I want to know so I can fix it. And your illegal operations? What happens when I stumble across something I shouldn't? You won't. They're completely separate. Different books, different locations, different personnel. I'm very careful about keeping clean money clean. He paused. But Rina, I won't lie. You'll know who you're working for. You'll know my reputation. Some people will judge you for that association. And if I accept, what's expected beyond the work? Nothing. The job is the job. If you want more, his eyes held hers. If you're interested in exploring whatever this is between us, that's separate. Personal, but there's no pressure. You can work for me and keep me at arm's length professionally. Is that what you want? Arm's length? No. His honesty was disarming. Rina, I'm attracted to you. Your mind, your courage, the way you solved our problem without hesitation. I'd like to get to know you better, date you if you're willing, but that's independent of the job offer. One doesn't require the other. The food arrived, giving Rina time to process. Everything he was offering was exactly what she needed. Money, professional challenge, a chance to use her skills. And the attraction wasn't one-sided. Sitting across from Hwan-sik, watching the intelligence in his eyes, feeling the pull of connection. She wanted this, both the job and the man, which was probably the worst idea ever. I need time to think, she said finally. This is a lot to process. Of course, take all the time you need. Hwan-sik smiled. Though I hope you'll at least finish dinner first. The food here is excellent. They ate, and conversation flowed easier than it should have. Hwan-sik was funny, self-deprecating, surprisingly well-read. He asked about her research at UW, listened intently as she explained her senior thesis on cryptocurrency adoption in developing economies. Shared stories about his sister, about the pressure of running an organization before he felt ready, about the weight of expectations. Do you regret it? Rina asked. Taking over your father's business? Every day, and never. Juan Six's expression was complicated. I wish I could have had a normal life. Finished school, worked a regular job, maybe become a professor or analyst. But this is my family's legacy, my responsibility. And there are people who depend on me. Employees in legitimate businesses, community members we protect. I can't walk away from that. But you're trying to change it, make it better. I'm trying. Whether I succeed, he shrugged, that depends on a lot of factors, including whether I can find the right people to help. The implication was clear. Rena could be one of those people. They talked through dessert, through coffee, through the restaurant slowly emptying around them. And somewhere in the conversation, Rena made her decision. Stupid or not, dangerous or not, she was going to take the risk. I'll take the job, she said as Juan Six walked her to her car. 3-month trial period. If anything feels wrong, if I find illegal activity in the companies I'm consulting for, if the lines get too blurred, I walk away. No questions, no pressure. Juan Six's smile was brilliant. Deal. When can you start? I need to give my cafe 2 weeks' notice. Fair. And the other part? Us? Rena looked at him. This dangerous, complicated man who made her feel seen for the first time in years. We take it slow. Get to know each other. See if this is real or just attraction plus gratitude plus professional chemistry. I can do slow. He stepped closer, and Rena's breath caught. Though I should warn you, I'm very good at being patient when I want something. And I want you, Rena Davis. Both your brilliant mind and everything else. You're very confident for someone who just met me. I'm very certain about what I want. There's a difference. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her skin. Thank you for taking the chance. On the job and on me. He kissed her then, soft, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Rena didn't pull away. She kissed him back, feeling the spark of connection ignite into something more. Something dangerous and thrilling and absolutely terrifying. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Juan Six rested his forehead against hers. Slow might kill me. Good, Rena said, smiling despite her racing heart. Keeps you honest. The 2 weeks before Rena started her new job passed in a blur of endings and beginnings. She gave notice at the cafe, trained her replacement, said goodbye to regular customers. Trinity remained skeptical but supportive, making Rena promise daily check-ins and maintaining her threat to call every agency in Seattle if anything went wrong. Juan Six called every evening, conversations ranging from professional, discussing company structures, introducing her to key personnel, to deeply personal. They talked about everything, childhood dreams, favorite books, fears and hopes, and the complicated dance of building something real while acknowledging all the reasons it shouldn't work. He took her to dinner twice more, each time choosing restaurants that balance privacy with public safety. Kissed her goodnight with increasing difficulty, maintaining the slow pace she'd insisted on. And every time Rena found herself falling deeper into something that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Her first day at Huang Enterprises, Rena arrived at a sleek office building in downtown Seattle, stomach full of nervous butterflies. The receptionist greeted her by name, had her badge ready, treated her with the professional courtesy reserved for important personnel. Mr. Huang asked me to show you to your office, the receptionist said, leading Rena to the elevator. He's in meetings all morning, but wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. The office was perfect. Corner position, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, modern furniture, and a desk setup that included dual monitors and every piece of software she could possibly need. A bouquet of flowers sat on the desk with a note in Juan Six's handwriting. Welcome to the team. I'm excited to see what you'll accomplish. Also excited to see you, but that's separate. Connie, H.O. The smiley face made her laugh. A mob boss using emoticons in handwritten notes. The absurdity of her life right now was staggering. Her first month was intense. Juan Six had given her access to everything. Financial records for 15 different companies ranging from restaurants to import businesses to real estate holdings. Rena dove in with the enthusiasm of someone finally getting to use her skills again. And what she found was fascinating. Juan Six had been honest. The legitimate businesses were exactly that. Legal, well-run, profitable on their own merit, but they were also inefficient, using outdated systems and missing obvious opportunities. Rena wrote reports, made presentations, proposed changes, and Hwansik listened. Actually listened, implemented her suggestions, gave her the authority to make real changes. Within 6 weeks, she'd streamlined operations at 3 restaurants, identified a profitable merger opportunity for 2 struggling import companies, and discovered a tax strategy that would save the entire enterprise hundreds of thousands. "You're a fucking genius," Sang-woo said after her first quarterly presentation to the executive team. "Boss, where did you find her?" "She found us," Hwansik said, eyes on Rena with unmistakable pride. "Or rather, we got lucky enough to ask the right waitress the right question." The team accepted her quickly, partly because her results spoke for themselves, partly because Hwansik made it clear she had his complete backing, but also because Rena treated everyone with respect, from executives to janitors, and genuinely cared about improving the businesses rather than just padding numbers. She kept her promise to herself about the illegal operations. Anytime she found something questionable, a transaction that didn't quite add up, a company connection that seemed suspicious, she brought it directly to Hwansik, and he fixed it. Every single time. "I meant what I said," he told her after she'd flagged a potential money laundering connection through one of the restaurants. "Clean money stays clean. If I'm going to transition this organization, I need to know where the problems are." 6 months in, Rena was indispensable and deeply, irreversibly in love. It had happened gradually. Long working dinners that turned personal, weekend coffee meetings that became dates, professional respect evolving into emotional intimacy. Hwansik was nothing like she'd expected. Yes, he was dangerous. Yes, he ran a criminal organization. But he was also kind, thoughtful, surprisingly vulnerable about his fears and doubts. He told her about the weight of his father's legacy, the pressure to be ruthless when his instinct was toward mercy, about loving his sister fiercely while knowing his world put her in constant danger, about the guilt of benefiting from systems built on exploitation while trying to dismantle those same systems. And Rena shared her own fears, of never being enough, of her mother's death meaning nothing, of getting comfortable in a life that compromised her values. Hwansik listened without judgment, offered perspective without trying to fix everything. They were lying on the couch in his penthouse apartment, a lazy Sunday afternoon, takeout containers scattered around, when Hwansik said quietly, "I love you." Rena froze. They'd been dating 8 months, working together for 6, but neither had said those words yet. Too scary, too real. "You don't have to say it back," Hwansik continued, fingers tracing patterns on her arm. I needed you to know. You've changed everything for me, Rena. The work, yes, but more than that. You make me believe I can actually be better. That there's a version of my life that isn't just damage control and moral compromise." Rena turned to face him, heart full of emotions too big for words. "I love you too. I've loved you for months. I was just terrified to admit it, because loving you means accepting your world. All of it. And can you accept it? I'm trying. Every day I'm trying to reconcile the man I love with the life you lead. It's not easy. Sometimes it's really hard. But Hwansik, you're worth it. This us is worth it." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of relief. "Move in with me. I know it's fast, but I want to wake up with you every morning, want to come home to you every night, want to build a life that's ours." "That's definitely fast. I know, but I'm certain about you, Rena, more certain than I've been about anything except loving my sister." His eyes held hers. "Move in, or don't, and we'll keep taking it slow. But know that I'm all in, completely, terrifyingly in love with you." Rena thought about her tiny studio apartment, about Trinity's concerned but supportive face, about the life she'd been living versus the one she could have, thought about fear versus courage, safety versus happiness. "Okay," she said. "Yes, I'll move in. But Hwansik, we have to be smart about this. Your world is dangerous. If people see me as leverage, then I protect you with everything I have." His voice turned steel hard. "No one touches you. No one even thinks about it. You're mine, and everyone in this city will know what that means. The possessiveness should have been concerning. Instead, it made Rena feel safer than she'd felt in years. Moving in together revealed new layers of Hwansik, the man who woke at 5 a.m. for brutal workouts, burning off stress and maintaining the physicality his world sometimes demanded. Who cooked elaborate Korean breakfasts on weekends, recipes his mother had taught him, who read voraciously, everything from economics journals to literary fiction, and loved debating ideas with Rena late into the night. But also the man who sometimes came home with blood on his hands, literal or metaphorical, carrying violence Rena preferred not to know about, who disappeared for hours with no explanation beyond business, who lived with constant vigilance, checking exits and assessing threats even in supposedly safe spaces. "Does it bother you?" he asked one night after she'd found him on the penthouse balcony at 2 a.m., unable to sleep. "The things I do, the person I have to be." "Yes," Rena said honestly, "but not the way you think. It bothers me that you carry it alone, that you think you have to be this untouchable, ruthless person to survive. I do have to be. If I show weakness, if I hesitate, then you're human. Hwansik, you can be both, strong and vulnerable, ruthless in business and kind at home. You don't have to compartmentalize so completely. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's possible." She moved to stand beside him, taking his hand. "Let me help carry some of it. Share the weight." He pulled her close, and Rena felt him relax slightly. These moments of vulnerability were rare, precious, times when the armor came down and she got to see the man behind the reputation. Year 2 brought changes. Hwansik's transition plan was working. Several criminal operations had been phased out, replaced by expanding legitimate businesses. The organization was actually more profitable now, with significantly less legal risk. Rena's consulting work had evolved into a COO position, overseeing operations across all Hwang Enterprises companies. She was good at it. Better than good, she was transforming the businesses, turning Hwansik's empire into something that could genuinely stand without its criminal foundation. And with every success, every quarter of legitimate growth, Hwansik moved closer to his goal of complete legitimacy. But transition attracted attention. Rival organizations saw opportunity in Hwansik's apparent softening. Federal investigators saw the legitimate growth and wondered if it was just better hidden criminality. And within the organization, some old guard resisted change, preferring the brutal simplicity of the past. The threat came on a Tuesday. Rena was leaving the office late, alone because Hwansik was in Vancouver on business. The parking garage was well lit, secure, patrolled. She had no reason to be worried. The men appeared from behind a concrete pillar. 3 of them, faces she didn't recognize, moving with the coordinated efficiency of professionals. "Miss Davis," the one in front said, accent marking him as Russian. "You're coming with us." Rena's training kicked in. The self-defense classes Hwansik had insisted on. The situational awareness drills Junho had taught her. She ran, made it maybe 20 feet before strong hands grabbed her, yanking her backward. She screamed, fought, landed a kick that made someone grunt with pain. But there were 3 of them, and 1 of her, and they were dragging her toward a van with the practiced ease of people who'd done this before. Then gunshots. The hands released her. Rena dropped to the ground, covering her head, as chaos exploded around her. More gunshots, shouting in Korean, the sound of bodies hitting concrete. When silence finally fell, Junho was there, pulling her up, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Rena, look at me. Are you hurt?" I'm okay. "What? Who were they?" "Bratva, Russian Mafia." Junho's face was grim. "They've been pushing into our territory. Boss has been handling it, but apparently they decided to send a message. Through you." The unspoken words hung heavy. Hwansik appeared 30 minutes later, having broken every speed limit between Vancouver and Seattle. The moment he saw Rena, shaken but unharmed, wrapped in a blanket in Junho's car, something in his expression cracked. He pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry. God, Rena, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. My world. You could have been, but I wasn't. I'm okay. We're okay." "No." He pulled back, and his eyes held something that looked like fear. Real, genuine terror. We're not okay. As long as you're with me, you're a target. I can't, I can't lose you. I can't live knowing my life puts you in danger. Rena's stomach dropped. What are you saying? That maybe we need to reconsider this. Us. Maybe you'd be safer if... Don't! The word came out sharp as broken glass. Don't you dare use this as an excuse to push me away. I knew the risks, Hwansik. I chose this. I chose you. You didn't choose to be kidnapped. I'm standing here. I fought back. Your people protected me. The system worked. Rena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I'm not leaving you because someone tried something. I'm not that fragile. You're everything to me. If something happened, then we deal with it together. But we don't prevent bad things by running from good ones. Her voice softened. Hwansik, I love you. Your world is dangerous, yes. But leaving you doesn't make me safer. It just makes us both miserable. You should have someone better. Someone whose enemies don't try to kidnap you in parking garages. I should have you. The real you. Not some sanitized version who pretends his life is simple. Rena kissed him softly. We're in this together. All of it. The good and the terrifying. Okay? Okay, he whispered. But Rena, I need you to understand. I'm going to end this. The Russians, the threats, all of it. No one touches you and lives. The promise was dark, absolute, and Rena knew he meant it. What followed was 3 weeks of controlled warfare. Hwansik moved against the Bratva with calculated precision, not the open violence his father would have used, but economic and political pressure that dismantled their operations piece by piece. Rena didn't ask for details, didn't want to know. When it was over, the Russian threat had been neutralized, and Hwansik's organization had shifted even further toward legitimacy, using the conflict as impetus to cut ties with remaining criminal elements. It's done, he told Rena one night, finding her on their balcony. Completely done. No more criminal operations. Everything we do now is legal, legitimate, clean. Really, all of it. All of it. The attack on you was a wake-up call. I can't claim to be protecting you while maintaining the systems that make you a target. He pulled her close. From now on, Hwang Enterprises is exactly what it appears to be. A legal conglomerate. No hidden operations, no criminal ties. Just business. That's huge, are you sure? I'm certain, because I'm going to marry you, Rena Davis. And I refuse to make you a mob boss's wife. You deserve better than that. The proposal was so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it took Rena a moment to process. Are you asking... I'm asking you to marry me. Not gracefully, apparently, but yes. Hwansik produced a ring. Elegant, understated, perfect. I love you. You've made me better. Made my life better. Made me believe I could actually be the man I want to be. Marry me. Build a life with me. A completely legitimate, boring, legal life. Rena laughed through sudden tears. That's the worst proposal ever. I know, let me try again. He dropped to one knee, and suddenly it wasn't casual or matter-of-fact. It was Hwansik, vulnerable and hopeful and completely sincere. Rena Davis, you walked into my life with cryptocurrency solutions and fearless attitude and turned everything upside down. You made me believe change was possible, made me want to be worthy of you. Will you marry me? Let me spend the rest of my life proving you didn't make a terrible mistake falling for a reformed mob boss? Yes, Rena said, pulling him up to kiss him. Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful, complicated man. I'll marry you. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended Korean tradition with Rena's Southern Baptist roots. Trinity served as maid of honor, giving a speech that made everyone cry and laugh simultaneously. Sang-woo, Jun-ho, and Dae-jung stood with Hwansik, these dangerous men in expensive suits dabbing at their eyes. Hwansik's sister gave a tearful toast about the woman who'd saved her brother from himself, and Rena's aunt, her mother's sister, who'd flown in from Atlanta, told stories about Rena's mother, about the dreams she'd had for her daughter, dreams that were finally, beautifully coming true. You did it, Hwansik whispered as they danced at the reception. You saved me, Rena, from my father's legacy, from the life I thought I was trapped in, from myself. We saved each other, Rena corrected. You gave me a chance to use my skills again, to be more than just someone serving coffee. We built this together. Best financial advice I ever got. Rena laughed, remembering that day in the cafe. Juan Sick asking for advice as a joke, her answering with confidence that surprised them both. Such a small moment, leading to everything. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Walking away from the criminal operations? Some of your father's old associates still think you went soft. Let them think that. I don't measure success in fear anymore. I measure it in this. He gestured to the room full of friends and family, legitimate business partners and employees who worked for companies they could be proud of. In you, in the life we're building. That's worth more than any empire built on violence. They built that life over the next years. Huang Enterprises thrived, becoming one of Seattle's most respected business conglomerates. Rena became COO officially, then CEO when Hwansik decided to focus on strategic development and his true passion, investing in community programs and immigrant support services. They had children eventually, two daughters who inherited their father's business acumen and their mother's fearless approach to problem solving. Raised them in a world completely divorced from criminality, with the freedom to choose their own paths. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, Rena and Hwansik would sit on their balcony and remember. Remember a cafe, a desperate financial problem, a joke question that changed everything. Thank you, Hwansik said during one of those evenings, for answering, for not being embarrassed or nervous, for being exactly who you are. Thank you for asking, for seeing something worth listening to in a waitress who couldn't keep her thoughts to herself. Best decision I ever made. Second best, Rena corrected with a smile. The best was actually listening when I answered. True, though falling in love with you might edge ahead of both of those. Smooth talker, honest talker. He pulled her close and Rena settled against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I love you, Rena Huang, my brilliant, fearless, extraordinary wife. I love you too, my reformed, ridiculous, wonderful husband. And sitting there watching the sunset over Seattle, Rena thought about the path that had led here. From student loans and shattered dreams to this, a life beyond anything she'd imagined. Built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared vision, and one woman's refusal to stay quiet when she saw a problem she could solve. Sometimes the best financial advice wasn't about money at all. Sometimes it was about recognizing value where others saw nothing, investing in possibilities instead of playing it safe, and having the courage to bet on something extraordinary. Even when that something was a joke question from a mob boss to a waitress, answered with confidence that changed everything.